Hosting for the Dice Tower is generously provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 458.
I hate this box!
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, we explore the origin of the meeple, learn the one question you shouldn't ask a game designer, and get another perspective on the gathering of friends. Plus, tales of horror and amazement, questions from the mailbag, and ways to deal with those annoying, flimsy, mass-market game boxes. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the rich Uncle Pennybags of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. What? What is this?
You get the reference? Oh, good. It's also known as Mr. Monopoly.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy.
You're an icon, Tom, an icon.
Oh, well.
Quite literally.
I don't want to be an icon. Oh, wow. Well. What a week. What a lot of things to talk about, a lot of games. I'm just excited. We're at the turning point in the year where they're like announcing all these new games and we're seeing new games coming out, and it's like, yeah, happiness. It's just exciting to me.
Yeah, you've got to you've been to several events where you get to see upcoming stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I get a kick out of that, and it's kind of a mix because there's these prototype conventions, and I've gone to one of those, and I really struggled there because these are prototypes that haven't even hit the publishers yet, and they may never ever, right? You're going to see like one good game out of 20. Right. But at these conventions that the publishers are, they've already vetted the games. These are games that they're going to publish. They still might not be that great, but they're not going to be absolute dreck.
Right.
That I've seen at this point. So I like that. I'm more interested in seeing those. So yes, I just got back from Cool Mini or Not convention, although I don't really know what I saw there yet because we're recording this before I went. But I'm sure I had a good time.
I'm sure you did.
I'm too lazy to do a future Tom.
It's not that difficult.
Yeah, it is.
Try it, you'll like it. The power.
Well, anyhow.
Is this working? It is working. Hey, this is Future Tom, and this is not as easy as Eric says because I don't have a sound booth in my house. But anyhow, we did go to the Cool Mini or Not convention and saw a lot of great games. However, I'm going to save all that for the next episode. Also, Future Tom has found out there's a special guest in our next episode, but you'll have to find out who that is then. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. We had also a lot of cool upcoming games from Cool Mini or Not, and this is Future Tom, who has to go and do future work. Signing off.
So, let's start talking about some games.
Let's. First up for me is a game called Isle of Skye. That's Skye. This is a tile-laying and set collection game. If at first glance you sort of look at it and say, that looks like Carcassonne. In fact, I showed my son a picture. He's like, that looks like Carcassonne. And that's actually a little bit of a danger because if you make some assumptions about rules in this game because you're familiar with Carcassonne, you can run into some trouble. In Isle of Skye, you will be building your own conglomeration of tiles. And you are trying to connect roads together and get different features, different icons into your civ, for lack of a better word, your village, your isle, that will allow you to score points. Because of these scoring cards, there will be 4 of these laid out. And based on the number of players, they will score in a specific sequence. If you're playing with like 2 to 4 players, you only score one of these scoring cards in the first couple of rounds. Then later they add another one. You'll score 2 of them and then 3 of them. In the 5-player game, you'll start out with 2, and then another 2, and then 3, and then another 3. They all end up scoring a certain number of times. But each individual round, you may have totally different criteria that you're focusing on. But those same criteria will eventually cycle back around and get scored again. It might be a number of icons that you're trying to go for, the majority, you're trying to get more than somebody else, or it might be clusters. Each tile is going to have some, land and water features and mountain features. And if you manage to close these off, they can count as points for you. And the way you get the tiles is also very interesting. You will be given 3 tiles at the beginning of a round. And you will decide one of these is out of the game. We're not going to have that tile show up. The other 2, you will put money, and this is your own money that you are placing next to these tiles. And you then everybody reveals simultaneously the prices they have set for these tiles. You then go around the table, and you may purchase one tile from another player, paying them the amount of money that they've placed next to the tile, so that you sort of double your money if one of your tiles sells. Then, after everyone has purchased one tile, they automatically buy any of their tiles that were not purchased, paying that money that they put next to the tiles to the bank. So you're going to get, maybe 3 tiles, maybe just 1 tile, and then you place them into your cluster and in whatever arrangement you want, and then comes the scoring round. It's really an interesting dynamic in setting the price for these things, knowing that you may be stuck paying for those tiles. So if you set the price too high, there goes your money. Even hopefully you wanted that tile in the first place. But also, this is very much one of those games that a particular tile means different things to different people. If I'm collecting a particular symbol, I may be willing to pay a lot more for that tile, but the other guys, not so much. And if I want a tile more than the one you think I'm going to buy, then you will get stuck with that. It was really neat. Downsides to this are that there are so many, in the 5-player game that we played, there are so many symbols, sometimes 2 or 3 different aspects on each individual tile, that it's very difficult sometimes to tell what's on each tile. As you look at the entire marketplace when everyone reveals, it's a little tricky to see what people are going for and make those calculations of what these are worth to other players. A little tricky there, but there's so much to like about this that I was really happy playing it. And the variations of those different scoring cards, there's a whole bunch that can come out in different combinations, which makes every game interesting and different. Really liked Isle of Skye. Thumbs up.
This game seems to be on a slow burn upwards. When I played this, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I said, you got to go in and realize it's not Carcassonne, and it has some neat aspects to it. But it did seem to get a lot of buzz. But as time goes by, I see more and more people talking about it. It's always interesting when that happens with games.
Yeah, the Carcassonne reference I made earlier, there are mountain ranges that, like, say 3 sides of a tile may be a mountain range. And in Carcassonne, there are tiles like that where they sort of get cut off at the corners. You know what I'm saying? So it's actually 3 different mountain ranges on the Carcassonne tile. But in Isle of Skye, that's one range. And depending on what the scoring cards are, you may misinterpret what it is you're building. And so cautionary tale, we played like half the game, giving some people a lot more points than they should have been getting for their mountain ranges before we realized what the actual interpretation of the rule was. So just watch out.
Okay, so let's talk about Exodus Proxima Centauri, the expansion for that. Exodus Proxima Centauri is a kind of like a Twilight Imperium light. It's not quite a light game, but it's basically a game in which players have spaceships and they're going to upgrade these spaceships and go around and fight other people with their spaceships, etc., etc. I think this game is best kind of a competitor straight up to Eclipse. Except with this one, I feel like there's more going on, and I like this better than Eclipse, like a lot better than Eclipse, because it has much more direct fighting. It has a better technology tree than Eclipse, because the one thing I don't like about Eclipse is the random technologies that show up. That makes no sense to me. So what is this expansion? It's called Exodus Edge of Extinction. This expansion adds asymmetrical player powers. Yay! I love it already. So asymmetrical player powers for Exodus Edge of Extinction. There's 6 of them. If there's any complaint I would have is that they're like, hey, this guy is the technology guy. This guy is the trader. This guy is the politics guy. Kind of buttonhole them into your typical thing. But they each have their own little technology tree that they can follow that only they have access to. They have their own set of action cards. They have their own upgrades that only they can build. And they just have completely different feels now to them. The game also adds some combat cards and some other minor changes, but it's mostly about these new, very different races, and I love Exodus Proxima Centauri. I love it even more with this expansion, and will not play the game without it. So that's nice. Exodus Edge of Extinction.
I need to play this game. You rave about it so much. I should really give it a try.
Well, I don't know that these aren't your style games, so I never kind of push these on you.
It's been a gentle push. Next for me is a game called Stratos, and I'm very excited to discuss this with you, Tom, because at some point a week or two ago, Tom texted me and said, hey, have you played Stratos yet? And I said, no, I'm planning to soon. And he said, never mind. I don't know what he wanted to talk about.
No. I'll tell you what. I was like, this game has a Settlers of Catan type feel. I feel like Eric talked about a game like that on the show.
No, this was not the one that I talked about.
But I believe you were talking about Valeria.
Maybe. I believe it was the Mission to Mars one that I was comparing to
Oh, that's right.
Settlers.
That's right. You were talking about Mission to Mars. Okay, that's right. I remember that now. Is this the game Eric was talking about?
No, it was not. In Stratos, you are trying to race. There is a nice comparison to Settlers there. You're racing to 10 points, and there's lots of different ways to get these 10 points. It is a resource gathering with almost a leveling up, stats-based RPG feel to it. You have a big grid of different land types, different terrain types, and you are trying to collect resources, upgrade your characters, get spells, defeat your enemies, all in a race to get 10 points. You earn points by turning in one of each basic resource in the game, by defeating other players, other characters. You get a point for that. If you upgrade all of there's 5 different character types in the game, you can upgrade them to be like a stronger version of the guy, a more effective version of the guy. That'll earn you, I think, 2 points. If you occupy certain spaces on the board, that'll earn you temporary points until somebody knocks you out of that tower. Stuff like that, and you're trying to get 10 of these before your opponents. On your turn, you get 2 actions for each of your dudes, and you can have up to 5 of them on the board. So you want to very quickly build up your forces. Based on a scenario, it's all scenario-based. You set up the map, and then you start out with usually like a little farmer, maybe an archer or something as part of your team, and you can purchase more of those character classes that you started with. You can upgrade them by spending the same amount of resources. And on your turn, you can collect these resources. You can move around the board. You can attack if your character has the ability to attack. And all the different classes are good at doing something. So the farmer is good at collecting resources. He can roll a d4 instead of just collecting one of the resources. That's the terrain type that he's on. And on a 4, he fails. But a 1, 2, or 3, he collects that number of resources. But if you upgrade him, now on a 4, he succeeds and gets 4 of those resources. And that sort of works for all of the different classes. If you upgrade them, a 4 is now a good thing and not a failure. There are spells that can do all sorts of crazy things.
Or a 6 in case of the one fighter.
Or a 6 in the case the fighter rolls a d6, and on a 6 he fails until you upgrade him. The wizards and mages that collect spells and do crazy things. And once you play a spell, that's another way to earn a point. If you play a spell you haven't played before, that's a point. And you continue until somebody has crossed 10, or there's other scenarios. There was actually like a defend the castle, or like a tower defense scenario that we played. The way you know what the stats are for each of these guys, because the spellcasters have like spirit points. You may find a piece of equipment because there's an explorer that can find stuff. Their hit points themselves are all attached to the standees. There's a bunch of cardboard standees and a bunch of little tokens that represent your spirit points and your health points and whatever. You may find a spear, and you have to sift through all these tokens to stick the little spear token, which I never even found a spear. Anyway, you've got tons of these little things that attach to slots on these standees, and it's sort of the definition of fiddly when you are dealing with that many tiny little pieces of cardboard. I liked the concept of Stratos. I liked the building and collecting of resources. It just felt a little clunky to me. And even some of the scenarios, the tile mix, you didn't have the proper number of tiles to do what they told you to do. Set up the map this way. Well, there aren't enough rock tiles. Some of the rules in the scenarios were just not as well defined as I would have liked them to be. It just felt a little not quite there. It's a near miss for me. I liked the concept, but especially with all those little tokens to pull on and off, and they were already getting bent by the time we were done. I can't quite recommend Stratos. How about you, Tom?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, man, I always sound like the jerk on these shows because Eric is so nice about games. So
I know.
Eric says he can't quite recommend it. I'll be a little clearer. Don't get it. All right? It's not good. Here's the thing. I do agree with Eric. There's a good idea in this game. I do like the idea of having the people moving around and being basically mobile settlers of Catan collecting resources. That's a cool idea. But there are many problems with the game. Eric has mentioned one of them with the fiddly pieces. That is horrible. I mean, just plain out awful. Your guy has 7 hit points and now he lost 2. So you take the 7 off and now I'm looking through this pile for the 5. Come on.
Oh, and they're two-sided. So the 5 has like a 1 on the other side of it. Oh, it's terrible.
Okay. Here's the deal though. Here's an easy solution for that problem. There's 5 different characters in this game. Just say you're only allowed to have 1 of each. And then you can put hit markers on their cards. You can put upgrades on their cards. Like if I find the Pitchfork of Destiny, I think that's actually a thing. If I find the Pitchfork of Destiny, they're like, you need to find that now in this pile of all these different things. They're like the little words are written on them. What is that? That's just...
But then, you want to be able to build multiple archers or something if you so desire.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. So you're going to sacrifice this, you're going to add that small flexibility so that you can do this. But to do that, you have to have all these little mini pieces. And like you said with the boards, honestly, this is a game that should have just come with a bunch of square boards with different variations of the resources on each side.
Yeah.
Why
they're almost trays. It's like trays with small tiles that fit into the trays in order to create the grid map that they want for the scenario.
Yeah, but the grid map is not that exciting, right? It's like, oh, I need a desert. There's one over here. Oh, I need this one. There's one. It's not like, the maps don't mean anything to me.
Well, the tower defense one had like rivers around a particular structure, and so it actually had a terrain or a map style to it. So it did matter.
I guess. But that's not where my bigger problems with the game come. My bigger problems with the game come with it's just too lucky. When you're doing combat's just, it's boring for one thing. Any game where you slowly walk across the board, then swing at someone, but you roll a die, that's how many hit points they lose. And they can defend to block 1 hit point. Are you kidding me? That's an actual action you can take to block 1 hit point from somebody else?
You can spend one of your 2 actions with a guy to simply defend if you know you're going to get smacked.
And combat is awful in the fact that you roll a die to see how much damage you do. You're rolling 1 die. It's wildly. So Eric attacks me with his guy and hits me for 6. He rolls a 6. I roll a 1. He won the battle. And losing a guy in this game is not like, I guess I'll get another one. It's a pain in the neck.
Right, you have saved up all these resources. We haven't gotten to spells yet, but there's a spell called Mesmerize that lets you take control of my guy. And so we charged up a super fighter, even upgraded him into the higher character class, and they march up with their wizard, take control of him. He turns and smacks and kills my archer that was standing next to him. And then they did it again a turn later because they had enough power to do so. And had him smack somebody else down. Yeah. And so we spent all those resources to charge him up, and they get to use him twice.
In my opinion, combat is very weak strategy in this game, and the spells and stuff are way overpowered. If I played this game again, which I won't, but if I played it again, the very first thing I would build would be a mage, hands down. Well, except maybe I'd build another peasant to get more resources. And that's another problem. That dice thing is a pain in the neck. You can take one resource of your choice, or you can roll a 4-sided die and take that, but if you roll a 4, you get nothing.
Right.
All right, so you want to get cracking in the beginning of a game. So you're not going to sit there and take one resource because you would literally take 2 or 3 turns to do anything.
Right.
So you roll the die. You get a 4, you are already majorly behind the next guy who just rolled a 3.
Well, then you need to upgrade your guy.
You need the resources to do that.
Yeah, but you should have upgraded him.
and just the more randomness with the person who explores stuff. Oh, look, this is a cool thing I found. Oh, look, everyone died.
Oh, right, I forgot about the traps. Oh, yeah, so this explorer can look under a tile. So these tiles are two-sided. There might be something underneath them. And if the explorer finds something, you draw a card. And it could be a trap that forces you to, like, the tile you just picked up caves in, and your guy is off the board for the next 2 turns. Yeah, I forgot about that.
So my question to you is, are you just wanting to like it because you like the idea of it?
I think I'm yes.
Because there's not just a couple problems. There's a lot of problems with the game.
Yeah, you're reminding me of a few, and there's one that we didn't even mention. The player colors are way too close to each other, and they only differentiate them with tiny little bands on the bottom of these standees. So from a distance, you can't tell who owns what. I'm getting riled up now. Forget near miss. This is a miss. Yeah, and it's the resource collection. I like that aspect. I like moving the farmers around to get that engine going, the engine building. That pushes my buttons. I like that stuff.
I agree.
So, creating a scenario-based sort of adventure fantasy thing with that behind it was interesting. But yeah, it's sort of, you've pointed out a few more things that did get me pretty upset.
I'm telling you, I feel like this was a non-blind play-tested game. They came up with ideas, they came up with this, they came up with that, and just not enough development put into it. Oh, well. That's Stratos, folks.
It is.
All right, last but not least, I played a Magic duel deck, Blessed vs. Cursed. This is my favorite way to play Magic the Gathering. They come with 2 decks of cards. You can play them against each other. So that even if you don't play Magic the Gathering most of the time, you don't need to worry about these. You don't get booster packs. You just get these 2 decks, and they're built to play against each other. The Blessed deck is a blue-white deck full of angels and humans. The Cursed deck is a black-blue deck filled with zombies. The features of the black-blue one are that your creatures keep coming back to life. The creature with the white-blue one is that you remove creatures from the game and then put them back in, which lets them launch special abilities multiple times. The white one, I would say, is for more of an advanced Magic player. It's a bit more fragile. It has pretty cool things, but there are combos that you need to pull off. While the black one is easier, and you just bring back zombies from the dead and go ha 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 and run over your opponent. It does seem pretty balanced, though, and it is fun. I always like these new dual decks. They do work best against each other. For example, in the white-blue deck, there's a card that kills a zombie. Well, that won't work against many Magic decks, right? But in this case, it does because your opponent's deck is full of zombies.
Right.
So that's Magic duel decks, Blessed versus Cursed.
Well, we were just talking about the similarities of Isle of Skye to Carcassonne. Let's hear how that particular game came to be.
Every game has a story, and this is one of them. Presenting Biography of a Board Game with your host, Professor Scott Rogers. This time I want to talk about a game that not only helped establish a genre, but coined a beloved gaming term as well, Carcassonne. Klaus-Jürgen Verde fell in love with board games when he visited the Essen Game Fair. There, he says, he caught the passion for playing. A few years later, while researching the history of the Crusades for his novel The Mystery of the Ghent Altarpiece, he visited the city of Carcassonne in southern France. Within the town's medieval walls and pastoral landscapes, he found inspiration not for a novel, but for a board game. Carcassonne's original design had peasants, monks, knights, and highwaymen all fighting for power and influence within the walled city. It took Verde a year to reduce these concepts to the clear and simple gameplay found in the game's final design. In Carcassonne, players place down tiles that represent terrain to connect roads, fields, and cities. Follower pawns, affectionately called meeples, are placed on the terrain to score points. The player with the most points when the stack of tiles runs out wins. Verde sent the rules and a few photographs of his prototype to the publisher Hans im Glück. The publisher was impressed with what they saw, and they rushed to publish the game in May of 2000. Thanks to the internet, Carcassonne quickly became popular with American gamers, who were just starting to learn about what they had called German-style games. Due to its popularity, Carcassonne was published in English the same year by Rio Grande Games. Carcassonne's box and tile art was painted by Doris Motthaus, but the most famous feature of the game is the distinctive worker piece, the meeple. The meeple was designed by Hans im Glück founder Bernd Brundhofer. The term meeple was coined by gamer Alison Hansel in 2000. The South Shore Gaming Group had just received their copy of Carcassonne from an importer. Fellow gamer Mark Edwards remembers it as this. At some point, Allison stuttered, "I love my people," and we proceeded to laugh and repeat using the word meeple for the rest of the night. I also remember Allison cooing over her meeples because they thought they were so cute. Allison added the term to the first Carcassonne FAQ, and the term stuck. Carcassonne received both the Spiel des Jahres and the Suchtschierspieles Prize in 2001. The Spiel Best Family Game in 2002, and the Vaux den Palais Family Game of the Year in 2004. The game is most notable for its many expansions, 45 in total, including the Catapult expansion, where players can physically launch tokens onto the board, and the Princess and the Dragon, which is Verde's favorite, and adds new followers, magic gates, and a fairy that provides protection to the players. The base game has been repackaged no less than 10 times in big box formats, which includes the base game and several of the expansions. 8 different standalone versions of the game have been produced, including Carcassonne the City, which was designed by famed creator Rainer Knizia, the biblical-themed Ark of the Covenant, and 2015's Carcassonne Star Wars Edition, which introduced player-versus-player combat. A card version of the game called Carcassonne was released in 2009, and there are several video game adaptations for the PC, Xbox 360, Nintendo DS, and mobile phone. No matter how you like to play, there's always a way to play Carcassonne. Carcassonne is not only a classic of Euro-style game design, but it's a great gateway game for anyone who's new to the hobby. I highly recommend it for gamers of all ages. Next time, we'll look at the abstract strategy game, Hive. Until next time, this has been Biography of a Board Game with your host, Professor Scott Rogers.
You know, I know he talked about Carcassonne there, but the thing that I was like, okay, let's learn about meeples.
Yeah, I know. That was kind of neat to hear about the genesis of the meeple.
That sort of thing does not happen often where someone uses terminology and it becomes popular lexicon. Like there's a lot of terms that people have made up over the years, like Ameritrash and things like that, that have taken off, but they're not everywhere. Like I don't go out in the street with like some people playing games and into gaming circles, like let's say Gen Con, and everyone knows what Ameritrash is. But you say meeple, right, and people know what that means. In fact, it's used in rule books for other games that aren't even made by Z-Man Games.
Right.
I will say this though, and please listen to me, content creators of the world. If you are starting a new podcast or video cast or anything, you do not need to put the word meeple in it. Stop. It's unoriginal.
Okay.
That is my public service announcement of the day. Hey, speaking of bad things.
And now, another tale of board gaming horror.
Gather round, children. I am a college pastor. My wife and I have been getting into hobby board gaming for the past 5 years. We have enjoyed introducing our college group to various party games beyond the boring, standard apples to apples. Telestrations was next on my list. I had already had moderate success with games like Resistance and One Night Ultimate Werewolf, so I was quite excited when I had finally saved up enough to purchase the party edition of Telestrations. I had played the game before, and I knew it would be a great hit with our college group. During our next gathering at my house, I was very excited to get this new game out. I sat everyone in a circle and began to pass out the books, markers, and cards. I explained the game and everyone dove right in. After each book had gone through everyone's hands, returning to its original owner, we were all excited to see our books. We couldn't wait to show everyone how far the final drawing had strayed from the starting word. As I stood up in the middle of the group, about to present the progression of thoughts from my book, one of the young ladies piped up, "Someone drew on my page with a pen." Dumbfounded, I began to look through my book. Sure enough, a pen had been used on one of my pages as well. Everyone searched their books and confirmed that, indeed, one of their pages had been written on with pen. At that moment, I realized that the extra dry erase marker that had been left over after I had passed out all the components was not an extra after all. Someone should have been using it. The culprit raised his pen matter-of-factly to identify himself as the one who had wrecked each and every one of my new books. He informed us that since he had brought his own pen, he had not taken one of mine, one of my dry erase markers. A flood of emotions overwhelmed me. I was rankled by the culprit's nonchalant attitude about his destructive deed. In fact, he still did not even understand that there was a problem. Rather than educate him in front of everyone, I tried to stay composed in order to keep the spirits up. Other players and my wife were visibly horrified. In my head, I kept telling myself, it's no big deal. It's just a game. We can still use it. It's just material things. It's just a game. While also reminding myself that strangling a student during a college activity was not a legal option. I took a deep breath and proceeded with presenting my book's progression of words and illustrations, using as much enthusiasm as I could muster, trying to not spoil the night for everyone. We did find a way to get the ink off the book, writing over the top of it with the dry erase marker and wiping it off. But each of my books will always have a page with the ignominious indentations from his word or drawing contribution. Forever.
All right, folks. We're back to less serious tales of horror.
Oh man!
But that is one that you can feel in your bones, right?
Day one. It's day one. Oh, first time you break out the game, and somebody destroys some aspect of it. That hurts.
I wonder what the guy who wrote with the pen was thinking. Was he like, oh, this is a pretty nice one-time use book?
One time? Yeah, what? Come on! Have you never seen a dry erase pen before?
Now, have you ever seen writing on a board with someone writing on a board with permanent marker instead of dry erase? I've seen that happen.
I have seen that. You make the mistake and either grab the wrong one or you can't find the dry erase and, maybe this will work. Yeah.
Now that is fixable. I found that out. You just do what he said. You write over it with the dry erase. And for some reason that works.
Yeah, it's sort of the solvent or, whatever makes the pen work. Loosens the ink. But the indentations and what are you thinking?
All right. Well, speaking of pigs.
Welcome to Cult of the Old, where I discuss games we may have forgotten about or games that failed miserably but still had some good mechanics in them.
He's Brian Counter, and everything he does is counterproductive.
This week, wanted to do another family-style game. This one's called Galloping Pigs, created in 1992 by Heinz Meister. Rated rank 6.7 and 5303 on Board Game Geek. Of course, I'm guessing at that 6.7 because with the redesign, someone put white on bright yellow. Very hard for me to read, but there you go. Galloping Pigs actually won the Spiel Award for children's game and is quite simple. You get a bunch of track cards, which are a bunch of straightaways, which you just kind of curve around on your table to make a track. There are 5 different colored pigs and cards that represent the 5 different colors. On a player's turn, they play one card of one color, and that pig moves forward 1. If the space in front of them is empty, they simply move forward 1. If it has a pig in front of them, they continue going forward until they hit an empty space. Kind of like the conga line of death ending to Fireball Island or a camel up kind of thing going there. Now, if the pig the player moved that turn winds up leading the pig back, they get to take a vegetable card. A race is over after all players have played 7 cards. However, a player only gets to keep their earned vegetables if, and only if, the last card they played gets them a vegetable because that pig is in the lead. And if that doesn't happen, they discard all of their vegetables for that race. At the end of the game, the player with the most vegetables wins, and you do a few races per game. Now, this game can be played with younger children, and it can be fun. However, this can also be played with older adult-type people, and that changes the game a little bit. I've played this with the heavy Euro guys to close an evening, and it's mindless, stupid fun, and garners a few laughs. But if you play with adults, this is kind of like a hey, that's my fish kind of thing. Where hey, that's my fish is basically Tron light bikes with penguins. Galloping Pigs, if played with headier people, you can see the planning for the end game to try and distance a pack of the pigs apart from the lead pack, so you mess over everyone else, and you stage it to where you're going to get the last card that lets you keep your veggies. So in that regard, it can be stupid adult fun as well. Despite its age, you can still find cheap copies of this game, and frankly, you can make your own if you really needed to. If this interests you, check out Galloping Pigs.
Mr. Vassal,
Tom.
any truth to the rumor that Nothing Personal is just a reskin of Click Clack Lumberjack?
Why are you so mean to your co-host?
All right, best food, Origins or Gen Con?
And now the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the bathroom?
Hey, Eric, a couple things here.
Yep.
First of all, you'll notice we're doing questions in this episode now instead of the other episode. We're moving things around,
I'm
folks.
so confused. What's going on?
Secondly, you can see the end of the questions. I can anyway.
What? Did you purge things?
No, I just haven't added any new questions for like a month and a half.
Oh, wow. Well, that's one way to get to the end.
No, it's because we need to get these done with. And then we'll start doing the other questions.
That's the problem with the plan of adding the ones you really want to answer to the front of the queue.
I still don't feel bad about that.
No, it just happens.
All right. Well, first question today comes from Dan. He talks about him loving the show, but he talks about viticulture. He sees that we gave viticulture the best expansion award for Tuscany, and we've said Tuscany is a must-have. Now they come out with Viticulture Essential Edition, which has parts of the expansion built into the game. Does it contain the right parts of the expansion to make it the experience you describe when talking about viticulture plus Tuscany? By the way, I have to say, I really like Stonemaier games, but I'm not really keen on this multiple versions of the same game. It's very confusing.
It is confusing, yeah.
You have the base game, then they had the deluxe type game, and then the expansion, then you could buy them both together. Then there was this now Essential Edition.
Right.
Essential Edition's fine. The Essential Edition has most of the modules I love about the expansion. It has my favorite module it does not have, which is the new board, which splits it into 4 seasons, which I really like. But it has all the rest. It has things that should be in the game anyway, like mamas and papas and the buildings I think are in it and stuff. So you can get it and be happy. Just get it and don't worry about what you don't have. Be happy with what you do.
I only have experience with the Essential Edition. That's the copy that I have. It's a great game in that edition. Jason says, are there people you know that win at every game they play? For example, I think some people are extremely good at strategizing and analyzing to get the most points, but if you put one of these people into a game that is more social, like Cosmic Encounter, then their performance will be suboptimal because this game requires both social and strategic skills. My theory is that everyone can be a winning player of some game if they pick the one that matches their skills and strengths. Yes.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say there. Well, I think that's kind of obvious. You can always find a game that you will be the best at something.
Yeah.
And yes, people who are really good at Euro games are not so good when you have to convince everyone else to let you win.
Yes,
I
because
find
they know
it's
you're going to
ironic
win.
that this question was asked us by Jason.
Is it really that, Jason?
No, it's a different Jason.
Oh, okay.
But it works in that situation. But yes, we have Jason Levine in my group, and he wins Euro games all the time. He hardly ever wins negotiation games. Why? Because he always wins the other games.
Yes. We've had a couple of very analytical players in our group come and go, and their win percentage is higher than the average for sure. But then you add a game that has, some dice in it or, luck of the card draw, and it sort of evens the playing field a little bit.
Nathan says he has trouble with game groups getting together for games and taking hours just to play the game because they are talking during the rules, checking their phones. And he says, all right, he gets it. That's part of who we are as humans. But how does he end the chatting up front and start the game without being a jerk? What about cell phones? You can't just break people's phones, can I? No, Nathan, you cannot break people's phones. The Dice Tower does not officially recommend that. I do say this to everybody listening. We did a survey for one of our game shows, like what's the most annoying trait of another player? Number 1 was analysis paralysis. Number 2 was checking their phone or being on their phone all the time. Mm-hmm. Listen, you might think it's not annoying other people, but it does. And those combined are the worst combination. So if someone's explaining the rules, shut up and listen to them.
Yeah.
Says a rules explainer.
Sometime back, we actually had a group meeting. There were some, other issues that we wanted to bring up, but as part of that, we sort of laid out some ground rules. Don't eat right over the games. When somebody's explaining the rules, let them talk. And one of them was, be considerate of the other players. We're all here to play the game that's in front of us and not check our phones. And I'm a little guilty of this because, part of what I do on my Twitter feed is take pictures of the games we're playing. And I try and be very conscious of doing that when it is not my turn and when I'm not being distracting to somebody else. But it is easy to, be checking messages and if somebody is taking a while on their turn to be like, oh, did I miss any text messages, stuff like that. It is a danger in this technological world we live in now where we're always connected to something that could be drawing our attention away from the game in front of us. But I think just laying out the ground rules, saying, we're all here to do this activity, not that activity. So, be considerate of everybody. Might be the way to go.
Yeah. The thing is people say, but there's, I need my phone. I might have an emergency at home. And that's fine. I'm not saying not to answer phones in cases of emergencies.
Right.
But an emergency is not, I just want to tell you I love you, honey, or stuff like that. You got to be careful because that stuff is fine. Like Eric said, he takes pictures. But I think the problem is that people will take a picture and tweet it and then instantly read the next 15 tweets.
Yes.
Or your wife will ask a question or a husband will ask you a question and you'll answer that question and then continue on in the conversation. And you might say, this isn't slowing the game down at all, but it is. You're just not seeing it.
Right. Your attention is diverted from what's in front of you. And, every time somebody has to say, it's your turn. You're up now. That's, a 30-second shift, and that adds up.
Now, how can you handle this with other people? I guess have a meeting. So tell us, Eric, how was this meeting called? How did someone decide to do this?
Well, we have an email list that everyone's on as far as organizing, and at one point we said, you know what, let's show up a little early, to game night and have a discussion, and it was, I think, well received.
Are you still a member of the group after this discussion?
I am.
This
It was
wasn't,
not. Fortunately,
kicking
when
you
I
out.
arrived, it was not a "how do we get rid of Eric" meeting. They after some pleading, they let me stay.
That'd be kind of awkward, though, right? Eric, this is an intervention.
Yeah.
We want you out.
Yeah, everything that we do, you talk about on this podcast you're on, and we don't like it. Niels asks, over the past couple of years, I experienced that my heavier games, in which you invest a lot of time and brain activity, don't leave my shelf anymore. Games like Arkham Horror, Twilight Imperium, or just heavy Euro games used to be popular with my gaming groups, but people just lost interest. They all suffer from the cult of the quick, preferring fast and easy gaming experiences. It's not that I don't enjoy these lighter games, but I just like my games to be a bit heavier from time to time. It seems like the majority of people just don't want to make the effort anymore. It really is a trend that I have noticed with my pupils as well. I teach English and Dutch to teenagers. They just don't seem to have a long attention span anymore. Have you seen this as well? And if so, is this something we should fight? Or should we just go with the flow?
It's kind of weird. For my children that I teach, I am teaching them to have longer attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
For people you play with, I think you should just stop whining about it. You will find other people who have these longer attention spans, or just enjoy the shorter games with them.
Right.
The fact is, those big, long, heavier games, they're fun and all that, but they didn't have these really nice, shorter games years ago. They do now, and it's amazing and fun. And so if people don't want to put the effort in heavy games, I can't really fault them for that.
Yeah.
What does it matter if they want to play the longer games or not? I'm not doing this for my benefit. I'm doing it for theirs.
I think it's important to, if you're going to be playing the lighter stuff, that they occasionally play a heavier game with you. I think that's one of the nice things about the pick list that we have in our group is that, if I really like the heavier stuff, occasionally when my turn comes up, I will have the opportunity to get my monster game to the table and have people play it with me. And then on another week, we may play 3 shorter games as opposed to the one longer one. And I think it's a good mix. It makes everybody happy.
Tuamos, is that how you say that?
I have no idea.
Tomas says, during our discussions of Time Stories and Pandemic Legacy, we talked about replayability. He has the same thing with every game, as his wife likes to play the game over and over again until she gets bored and never play it again.
Huh.
He'd rather play a smaller game and some bigger games when he has more time, but not an hour and a half of Red 7 or Love Letter. And he would rather play some other game in between, not just Dominion, Sheriff of Nottingham, or any other longer games 50 to 100 times. Have you ever played a good game too much and got bored? Or maybe he just hasn't found the game with endless gameplay. And he knows that there's expansions and stuff, but the fact is, what do you do? So his first question is there a good game that you can play forever and ever and not get bored with?
This is hard because I rarely play a game at that level of repetition before moving on to something else, at least for a little while. I don't have somebody who's demanding to play the same thing over and over again. I guess the closest thing was when Dominion first came out. We were playing that near constantly. But the variety helped with that one.
Yeah, I think this sounds like this is a you thing. I think this is you don't want to play the same game multiple times. I think this is something you have to work out with your wife. Just say, I don't want to play the same game over and over again. Because if you think that Dominion and these games don't have that same kind of replayability, I don't know that you'll find any game that will have that for you.
Right.
And I'm with you. I like to play lots of games over and over again, but I very rarely want to play them over and over again in a row.
Right.
I'd be like, what? Oh, we're going to play. I love Dominion, but when I was in the throes of Dominion playing, there would come a point where I'd be like, all right, we just played Dominion 6 times. Let's try something else now. His other question, he says, is how many listeners do your audio podcast have? All versions included. And is there some variations depending on month, time of year, etc.? And you can check our video stats.
Yeah, well, like YouTube videos, you can easily see how many views there are. But the audio podcast, that's not something that you can just check. You can, Tom, but, I can't.
Right. You actually have... we have a pretty decent long tail on the podcast, which means that even the oldest podcasts still get like 100 downloads per month, which is interesting. And when a podcast comes out, it will get a certain amount, and then over the next couple months, still get thousands for each of those months. So a lot of people don't listen to them right when we first put them out. We are averaging around 40,000 people per show, although the long tail eventually brings it up to 50,000 as time goes by. I don't notice any time of year where people listen more often than others, but more people do listen to some shows. Our end of the year show by far are the most popular shows we do. And then if I add in the 6, 7, 8,000 who are also listening to it on the video feed now, the enhanced version of the podcast, which if you didn't know actually exists, folks, if you want to listen to our podcast on a YouTube video, you can. And it also has pictures of the games that we're talking about.
Cool.
So that exists. So, 50,000, I guess, is a good number to throw around. I'm pretty happy with those numbers, really.
That's staggering to me. But thank you, everybody. All 50,000 of it. Well, all right, 49,000. You guys over there, I don't know. I think you just have it still on the iPod. You're not listening.
Yeah, that's true. It's really hard to tell, right? Because I think, though, that the number of downloads is pretty accurate to how many people are listening to your show. Because for every person who downloads your show and doesn't listen to it, there's also someone who downloads the show and listens to it with 1, 2, 3 other people in the car.
That's true, yeah.
So, yeah, when we really had a huge burst of numbers after Gen Con a couple years ago. For a long time, we were stuck. When Eric first came on the show, I believe we were getting 5,000 an episode.
That sounds about right. That was a number we were throwing around for a while.
Yeah, it felt pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're just adding a 0. Now, I don't know when we'll add the next 0. 500,000 listeners. Probably never. Although I would never have guessed that we got to this many listeners either.
That's crazy.
And it's interesting because I can see my other podcasts, like when we did Dice Tower Showdown, Board Game University, and Dice Steeple and things like that. Those get nothing like these do. If I get 3,000, I'm like, woo, we're doing great. It's all Eric, apparently. When I take him out of the show, nothing.
Sure. I'll take it. David has a question about board game group etiquette. I grew up like you, playing a lot of video games, but have recently found I do not have the time to commit to them, so I've picked up board gaming. I just recently discharged from the armed service and moved to a new city for work. I've started a small collection and started to look for other gamers, but unfortunately my colleagues at work are much older than me, and the students I go to class with in college are too young. I'm stuck in the middle. I am afraid to put out an open invitation to strangers on Craigslist or Meetup. However, I found one new friend to play with. We finally were able to have a game night. We started with Sentinels of the Multiverse and Star Realms on our first day. It went well, and we quickly scheduled another night. The second night, we decided to play Star Wars Imperial Assault, a game I had experience in. We played the tutorial and jumped into the first mission, and I feel ashamed to admit, looking back, I went in looking for blood and completely trashed him. I am very competitive, and I guess I forgot I was playing a beginner. I remember watching you play Sam in Imperial Assault, where you were winning and you decided to self-destruct your probe droid and give the victory to Sam. You still had fun, and Sam did too. So what I'm really asking is, do you have advice for someone trying to start a new group and suggestions on how to curb back competitiveness in board games just to have fun? It's probably a bad idea to smack the guy down on the first play.
Yeah.
That's a third or fourth meeting sort of thing.
Yeah, well, some people handle it better than others, too. You really got to gauge it out. Some people love when you come after them full bore. They love that.
Right.
Bring it.
Yeah.
Most people don't, especially when they're new. And it always makes me think of as a kid when I would play Street Fighter or some other game against someone else, and they'd be like, all right, let's play. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
You're dead. And I'd be like,
Wait, which one's the kick button?
How do I do special moves? Oh, you'll figure it out. Just try different combinations. No, I'm not going to figure it out because you killed me.
Yeah. No. You're trying to look at the manual while you're playing. Wait, what is the... I go in a circle? What? Oh, wait, which one's kick?
Yes, really annoying. But, so you just need to work on that, Do I have advice for starting a new group? Don't crush everybody in the group. Be nice. Have fun. And if you find yourself getting too competitive, then you need to take some steps back. You need to maybe seek some help even on that, because gaming should be for fun no matter what, no matter what.
And, I mean, this is a general teaching game rule. If you're the teacher and at least one player at the table this is their first time ever experiencing this particular game, especially if it's a heavy one, you gotta be a little easy on them. Don't go for the jugular right away. You have to actually let them learn the game first.
All right, Max. Last question from Max. There's another game etiquette thing. He has a bunch of friends who come over on game night, and they play somewhere between 5 and 10 hours, and they eat, and they talk, and it's fun. And they played a long game of Dead of Winter, and it was this great game, and his wife, betrayed everybody. All right, hooray. He said, then a strange thing happened. One of our friends said that she really had to get home and practically ran from the table to put her jacket and shoes. Another friend that needed the ride home went with her. So now his wife and him and only one remaining friend were left alone to pack the game. He said this really bothered him. When playing a tense game that you've invested time, feeling, and thought, he needs to have some post-game talk, just 15 to 20 minutes or so to discuss the game, forgive those you accuse, laugh about mistakes. He needs some sort of closure. He finds, especially during a tense game, he needs his time to rewind. He says, am I mad here, or is it a bit impolite to leave after a long, tense, and nerve-wracking game without at least 15 minutes of laughing and unwinding? Max, you're mad.
Well, I mean...
And I'll tell you why. Because in a game that's really long like this, sometimes these people are sitting there going, okay, I'll say to the end of this because I don't want to be rude and leave, but as soon as it's over, I gotta go.
I have to leave, yeah.
You can't fault people for that. If you're expecting people to stick around for 15 to 20 minutes to talk about games afterward, then you need to make that clear up front so they know.
Yeah. 15 to 20 seems like a pretty
agree.
That's a pretty big investment to add to tack on to a game night.
Now this happens sometimes when I go to a game night. I finish up the last game and now we sit around and talk, not usually about that game, but just about life in general. And then, we go home. But there are also some nights where I'm like, all right, we're done. I'm out.
Right.
And I never have once felt guilty about that. We're not talking about leaving in the middle of a game. And I don't think you were even talking about having people help you clean up. I might be like, I got to run. Do you need me to help you clean up? It's usually not a big deal.
Right. Although I think that is more of a faux pas. If it's the end of the night and everyone is going to be, putting the table down, putting chairs away, that sort of thing, it is impolite to run out before that task is complete.
Well, it's not if you ask and say, listen, I really got to get going. Is it okay?
I'm late. I've stayed too late as it is. Is it okay if I go this one time? Yeah. And usually everyone's fine.
But that's not what Max is asking about. Max is asking about them staying for this cool down time.
Right. The discussion period.
I don't see that that's something you need. I mean, it's okay, but I don't know. Usually when I'm done with the game, I'm like, I need to think about this for a while in my head. I'll talk to you guys about it later. And later on, I'm like, hey, remember you did that? In retrospect, but usually when the game's over.
Yeah. I think Max might be wanting something that the rest of the group isn't.
All right, Eric, can you believe this? Look at that.
Whoa.
There's only 2 questions left.
Yeah, that's not really true. He has a whole box of questions in the back that he just hasn't brought out yet.
All right, well, let's get to someone who's so smart they could have answered all these questions for us.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for GameTek with Jeff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
I was recently talking to a famous designer who shall remain nameless, and he said, if one more person asks me if I start with mechanics or theme first, I'm going to punch him. Mechanics and theme should work harmoniously together. In a very real sense, one cannot exist without the other. Now, I was reminded of a big discussion in Robert McKee's book Story about screenwriting. He says that he's constantly asked which is more important in a story, plot or character, and he says that the question is meaningless. Plot and character are in essence the same thing. The plot arises from a character making decisions, and those decisions define the character. The plot and characters feed back on each other in a loop. Characters making decisions that move the plot forward, and that movement forcing characters to make decisions on how to react, and around and around. In a game, the connection might not be quite as tight, but when they are at odds with each other, it can undermine what the game is trying to accomplish. The combination of mechanics and theme result in the player experience, and it is that experience that good designers are focusing on. Let's do a thought experiment. The wonderful Incan Gold, or Diamante, as it is also known, by Fedudi and Moon, cast the players as Indiana Jones types, exploring deeper and deeper into a cave to try to grab the most gems. Each turn, every player makes a simple decision: move further into the cave and risk losing all your loot, or go home and bank what you've found. As the cave fills with hazards, the tension builds. And the mechanics and theme here are perfectly intertwined, and they support the tension and the narrative. Now, Flashpoint Fire Rescue, from designer Kevin Lansing, is a cooperative game about firefighting. The players must work together to rescue at least 7 out of 10 people trapped in a burning building. It also features a push-a-luck mechanic, as the players have to take chances in guessing how the fire will spread. Flashpoint is another excellent integration of theme and mechanisms. The cooperative nature, the spreading of the fire, all work together to build tension and give the players a satisfying experience. So let's combine these games. Let's take Incan Gold and retheme it with firefighters trying to rescue as many people as possible from a burning house before it collapses. So now, unlike Flashpoint, this is a competitive game, but players don't directly get in each other's way. It's as if each is pushing forward into the building separately and trying to rescue people. Or we can say that the farther they get into the building, the more heroism points they earn. When the fighters think that it's too risky to continue to push on, they leave the building and have that many heroism points. Other players may try to earn more heroism, staying in the building longer before leaving. Now, mechanically, this is exactly the same as Incan Gold, but I would not be as satisfied playing this game. As a player, I would have a different experience. In Incan Gold, I'm Indiana Jones trying to push my luck to get golden jewels, and if I stay in too long, I was greedy and the other players can laugh at me. But if I'm a firefighter and push too far into a burning building to try to save more people, I think it would actually be a tougher decision to decide to turn back and leave the building, even at the risk of losing the game. Psychologically, the new theme turns the decision it wants the players to make on its head. In Incan Gold, leaving and not being greedy is the safe, sane, and society-approved choice. In our fire game, leaving early is cowardly, against the code of firefighting, and put other people's lives at risk. The theme and mechanics combine to make a very different experience for the players, one where what the designer wants may differ greatly from what the players are actually doing. Now, we experienced a similar thing when designing Survive Space Attack. In the original Survive, the players are attacked by other players in the guise of sharks and sea monsters. In our initial retheme, we replaced the sea creatures with rebel fighters that attacked the player tokens as they tried to float to safety in escape pods or just out in their spacesuits. But there's a real difference in attitude when you use a shark to go after someone swimming than if you're piloting an X-Wing and actually just shooting innocent, defenseless people floating in a spacesuit. Yes, they both end up dead, but the psychology of it turned out to be completely different, and we end up scrapping that whole design for generic bug-like aliens, which fulfilled the same roles as in the original game. Now, as a designer, you need to pay attention to the linkage of both theme and mechanics, and make sure that they reinforce where you want to take the players. And as an experiment, I might try to make a firefighting themed Incan Gold and see if it actually does change how long the players stick it out before heading back home. This is Jeff Engelstein with GameTek.
You know, I know what designer Jeff is talking about because he said the same thing to me. And it actually made me think, and I was like, all right, you know what? That's true. That's an over-asked question. From now on, in all our interviews and everything, that is out.
Okay.
No more asking theme or mechanics first. No more. Dice Tower will not do that.
All right.
Tales of Amazement.
I often listen to Tom and Eric's reviews of children's games. I rely on them for good reviews because I can't waste money on bad games. Well, who can? The situation is even more relevant for our family since our eldest son, 7, has medical issues that affect his learning ability. He was diagnosed as a high-functioning autistic child. As such, his ability to express himself lags behind other children his age. For example, he was almost completely nonverbal until the age of 4. In addition, my son has a rare genetic disease that produces phosphorus loss in the bones, rendering him with bowed legs from rickets and the resulting difficulty and pain when walking. To cap the situation, I have been unemployed for an unfortunately long time, and we are barely getting by. Almost every educational product I've gotten for my son has either come from thrift stores or was given to us. Added to that, for various long and irritating reasons, we felt forced to withdraw him from public school. You can see how important it is to spend wisely. I found that educational games, the rare good ones, really help. I credit several card, board, and iPad app games with breaking through to him to speed up his ability to speak. The mix of the highly visual and the interactive focused him to the subject at hand. I think that a properly engaged and selective gamification of education would be a boon for so many autistic kids. On the Dice Tower episode 434, Eric mentioned an educational card game that his parents got for his son. He gave a positive review, so I thought that perhaps I would look into purchasing the product. As part of his autism, my son will launch into streaks of single-subject obsessions, which will eventually burn out. This card game just happened to match his current interests. I found that I can use situations like this to teach him various math, language, and life skills. In a way, I'm using his autism against itself. Motivation is everything. I looked the publisher up and found that there was no stores even remotely near me. Determined, I emailed the company to see if they could sell it to me directly online. I thought that if I saved $5 a week or so, I could eventually have enough to purchase it. The publisher soon got back to me. Bad luck, no stores nearby, and no quick and easy way to purchase online. But alas, sunlight broke through the clouds. The publisher was so grateful that I alerted him to the review on the Dice Tower that he was sending the card game to me for free. What a company! I eagerly awaited the arrival. When it came, my son was fascinated by the subject in the game and its artwork. He almost leaped into play. Before long, he was gaming well and learning all the little ordinary skills that so many of us take for granted: organization of items, counting, manual dexterity, waiting turns, relating abstract ideas to concrete facts, etc. The next day, my son went with me to pick up his little brother from school. He was silent most of the way, but then he started asking me questions and telling me the answers to many of the facts from the card game. Many of the replies were detailed and showed me that he was actually understanding the facts displayed in the game. We had no idea that he absorbed so much in such a little time. Learning through fun. Huzzah!
Huzzah indeed.
It's time for the Dice Tower's Question of the Week, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., in which our team of gaming experts answers one of your questions, thus increasing the odds that someone will get it right. This week's question: what do you do to deal with those mass-market board game boxes that only open from the side?
Jonathan from the Snakes Cast. At Snakes and Lattes, we have a very simple solution for those boxes. We don't use them. Put the cards in one of those little plastic deck boxes like Magic players use and throw the useless cardboard box in the recycling. Seriously, it's not a problem. No, the problem is metal tins. Unless they're the really little ones that just contain a deck of cards and nothing else, like Spot It, then we can just lay it on the shelf horizontally and it's fine. But metal boxes for full-sized games are an absolute nightmare. When you stack them on their sides like books, they never stay closed and the bits go everywhere. Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, Panic Station. Ugh, stop using metal boxes for board games.
Hey there, this is Graham from the Four Corners of the Board podcast. Being a bit of a collector myself, I tend to keep all my games in their original boxes. So although I do find the mass market boxes annoying, I tend just to keep them as is. But I do tend to keep them on top of the pile on the shelf as well, as they tend to be flimsy and easy squashable, and I don't want anything happening to my boxes.
Hey everyone, it's Mark Zielinski. We all hate those crummy mass market boxes, but sometimes, you just can't find something that's going to fit in your game collection that's going to be able to store that crummy box worth of content. So maybe a little bit more than half the time it stays in the crummy box. But if I get lucky and the components will fit in one of those stacking Sterlite tubs, the smaller ones, not the big giant ones, I'll go ahead and put them in those. But like I said, most of the time they'll just stay in the crummy box.
Man. I need to do some more like bin shopping or small box shopping because I just end up using these boxes. Like Lupin Louie, one of my favorite kids games, and its box is terrible. It only opens from the side, and if you stack anything on top of it, it's going to crush. You just sort of throw the components in it, but I still keep the box because I don't really have another solution that I've put together. The only time I really rebox is when opening the box destroys the box. When they're some card games are like this, you have to just repackage them. Or Monopoly Duel, is that right? Or Monopoly Hotels, that's right. That the box actually looks like a hotel, but once you've opened and closed it a few times, it's barely useful. You got to find some other way to store that thing. Tom?
I'll tell you, first of all, I'm torn about the snakes, guys, because I'm pleased that they agree with me about tins, but I feel like he is answering a different question.
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of people kind of talked a little bit about the small card boxes, that I hate those that open from the side, but I was talking about what you're talking about, that Looping Louie. That really is frustrating to me.
Right.
It really boggles my mind that companies release these boxes knowing that when you open them, they collapse and you can't put the pieces in because then the other side opens and then the pieces fall out. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
And Looping Louie is a great example. My Looping Louie is actually in a plastic bin. One of those snap tight lid ones. I managed to fit all the pieces into it. They barely fit in, but it fits in nice and snug. And it's okay, but I don't like having it on my shelf because I would like to have the nice box.
Right. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I think I taped one end of Lupin Louie closed. So it only opens on one end, which is a little better and a little more structurally sound.
Right. It's a little bit better, but it still has that problem with it getting crushed.
Right.
And just getting all the pieces out. You have to literally dump them out.
Right.
So really, fortunately, this is not too much in our society. It's mostly Hasbro and Mattel companies that are making games like these. And they don't do it with all their games, but some. And it infuriates me. And so I was hoping people had good solutions, and no one really does.
Well, you put them in a... There's a Kickstarter out now with a game folio system, which looks interesting.
Yeah, I saw that. And here's the deal. That game folio thing is fascinating to me, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'd like to actually see it in person because I think that for people who are listening, the game folio system, it's like a big gym bag type thing.
Yep. And
you could store your games in it, but instead they come with these game folio cases. They're all the same size, and they look like a small leather-bound suitcase. Not suitcase.
Like a small laptop case or something that slips into the larger duffel bag.
Right, and when you open these up, there's a spot for the board of the game. There's little pouches for all the pieces, and then you slide your rules in the front of it so you could, at a glance, see what game's what. And these smaller cases fit perfectly in the bag, and it looks amazing. But what makes me hesitate about it is that when you put your stuff into one of these things, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's more work than just bagging up the stuff and throwing it in a box. And so if you're going to put it in one of these things, you're going to leave it in one of these things, and they're too expensive for me to put all my games in them.
Right. How many of these would I have to buy to, even if I put 5% of my games into them?
So what I thought was interesting about this was I was like, okay, but what if I'm taking 5 or 6 games to a game convention to play? Then this thing is perfect for that.
Yeah.
It stores them in there nice and neatly. They're there. It's easy to travel. I could take this as a carry-on on the plane. It's great for that purpose. So I'm half tempted to get one for that alone. Although it's still expensive.
It is quite expensive, yeah.
What I want is the one with all the folio cases inside it and the shoulder strap, and that's like the higher price thing, and I've already missed the early bird stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, don't get me started on early birds. I want to be able to think about my purchases, thank you.
Yes.
So I don't know. I'm kind of, but I like the idea.
Yes.
If companies made amazing boxes, I wouldn't have to think about this. Getting back to the topic.
I do like the concept of having a uniform thing. You know, putting the folios on the shelf is kind of cool.
That if I was super rich,
right,
put every single one of your games in those. That'd be amazing.
100 folios, yeah.
I bet they would like that too.
Oh, I'm sure they would.
All right. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up another episode. I appreciate everybody who was on the episode once again. Thank you, Eric, sir. Thank you
sure.
To all our contributors. I'm going to end this now. So until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thank you for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 458, was recorded on May 4th, 2016. Coming up next week, it's our top 10 games with the best art on its cards. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has turned your game upside down, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with assistance from Jason Thompson, Itai Perez, Eric Matthews, and Rob Searing. Bovine sunbathing assessments provided by Is Tan Bull? Timothy Pickham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including The Broken Meeple, Boards and Swords, Start Space, The Long View, The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, and Board Game University. Find out more at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. That would be interesting if your entire game room was just filled with little gray folios. It would be like an archive library.
Right, and you'd have to have like a two things. You'd have to have a nice little catalog system. It'd have to be card catalogs, though.
Oh, okay? Yes. No digital here.
And a sliding ladder.
Ah, yes. With just a room full of folios.
Also, all the bookshelves need to be set up in such a way that if you knock over one of them, it knocks over all of them.
Like dominoes.
And if you're going to have an important conversation with somebody, you will do it through a bookcase.
Yes, that's a requirement. You put up a sign that says that's how you have to do it. And then with all the boxes that you don't use, you can put an addition on your house.
Oh.
Or maybe build the room for the library itself.
You've gone too far.
I've got a plan.